Hello, my name is Henry Key and this is News Pulse at UATV. Welcome to the daily segment. Today in the episode. Burning Russian warehouses are legit targets because Russia itself, all of its territory, became legit target the very moment the Kremlin turned it into one by launching its war of aggression against Ukraine. As absurd as it gets, no more Russian Navy in the sea they occupied. Robert Madyar explains how and why in a very fiery, very straightforward way. The agony of the Kremlin, Putin has gone all in unprecedented ballistic horror wave against civilian Kyiv. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed successful strikes on targets in the Moscow region, located more than 400 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. He said both an oil depot in Podolsk and Yuzhny Vrata warehouse, that sounds South Gates in English. This is a complex in Domodyedovo on fire as of now, and Wildberry's logistics hub has been targeted for the second time. This place was used by Russians to store military equipment and drones in there, so it is a legitimate military target, and it was the Kremlin that turned it into such by starting its war of aggression against Ukraine.
Our long-range sanctions have produced results against logistics facilities and an oil depot. We are responding justly to every Russian strike against our cities and communities. This war must be brought to an end, and that is only possible by increasing the pressure on the sole cause of this war, Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on X.
The unmanned system forces of Ukraine have traced and targeted more Russian shadow fleet vessels in the Black and Azov seas last night. 13 of them, to be precise, according to Commander Brody Robert Madyar. 8 dry cargo ships, an oil tanker, a gas tanker just as well, a tugboat, and 2 floating cranes were hit. Since the start of the operation, Bird's Milk, as much as 172 Russian vessels belonging to the Shadow Fleet has been already struck. It is 118 in the Azov Sea and 54 in the Black Sea. Moreover, Russia has lost almost 3/4 of the capacity of the Kerch ferry crossing, which provides military logistics between the Russian Federation and temporarily occupied Crimea.
The Kerch ferry service lost 75% of its capacity during the 2-week operation of the Bird's Milk of the Unmanned Systems Forces of Ukraine. Only 25% remains. Will they survive? I don't think so. Before the operation, the Kerch ferry service for transport and cargo was supported by 4 ferries, regularly operating between the ports of Caucasus and Crimea. Robert Madyar, the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces of Ukraine, on Facebook.
On the night of Sunday, July 19th, Russia carried out one of the most massive, horrific ballistic missile attacks on civilian Kyiv. The enemy used more than 40 missiles of various types, most of them targeting the capital, Kyiv, and about 120 assault drones add to that. Again, there are dead and wounded in Kyiv and the surrounding region. The aftermath of the strike again is horrific in scale, with nearly 600 rescues involved. First responders are also working in the Odessa region just as well. This week alone, Russia has used approximately 1,450 attack drones, more than 1,640 guided aerial bombs and 99 missiles of different types against civilians in Ukraine.
Russia is placing its wagers on ballistic missiles, and it is because of them that Putin still believes in his war. Today, our air defense forces and all our defenders of the skies managed to shoot down 18 missiles and neutralize more than 100 drones. It is very important that our partners understand what is happening and that air defense missiles are needed to protect lives literally every single day.
Experts say it is an agony, yes. However, such an agonizing pace has its costs, unsustainable even for a large, developed economy at peace, let alone for Russian oil revenues addicted one at war.
Russian forces have launched more ballistic missiles against Ukraine thus far in July than Russia reportedly produces each month. Ukrainian defense source Militarny reported on July 19th that Russia used up to 2/3 of its planned annual production of Zircon missiles in July 2026 alone, and that Russia launched more ballistic missiles in July than Russia's reported total monthly production volume, from the report of Institute for the Study of War.
Andy Burnham follows Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. He is now officially the fourth Prime Minister of King Charles' reign. Andy Burnham, even while a candidate to lead the UK Labour Party and then to become Britain's next Prime Minister, was saying he would maintain the country's support for Ukraine against Russian aggression. Burnham made this statement in a column for The Times. Now as Prime Minister, Burnham is sure the United Kingdom can strengthen its own defence capabilities while also ensuring economic growth. He also reaffirmed Britain's commitment to NATO obligations, nuclear deterrence and its strategic partnership with the United States. Britain's support for Ukraine will not waver, Burnham said. We recognise that British security and wider Euro-Atlantic security are tied to what happens in Ukraine. Hungarian President Tamás Sugyok has officially signed constitutional amendments that will terminate his own powers. It is in fact a resignation. This decision will effectively remove the head of the state from office in the coming days already. Sugyok approved the 17th Amendment to the country's basic law. Now his mandate will end the day after the law is officially published in the Hungarian Gazette. This amendment was not accidental, as it became part of major political reconstruction. Parliament approved the changes earlier this week. The TISA party, led by Peter Madyar, is behind the process. They won the election in April and immediately initiated large-scale reforms. The removal of the incumbent president was one of the decisive steps of the new government. 1 in each 5 lorries in Russia is currently idle. The country has been hit by Ukrainian drones. Oh, sorry for that. A major fuel crisis. The shortage of fuel is forcing Russians to queues where they spend hours or sometimes even days. Small logistics companies are facing the risk of bankruptcy on a massive scale, whilst the average daily mileage of vehicles has fallen sharply. The Ukrainian armed forces are literally disrupting the logistics of arms supply, so the Kremlin is being forced to resort to extreme measures to try and keep the fuel market afloat, at least in some way. More in our next story for you.
Russia's fuel crisis, triggered by Ukrainian drone strikes on the country's oil refineries, has forced up to 20% of Russia's freight trucking fleet out of service. Fuel shortages and long lines at filling stations have evolved into a systemic disruption, dealing a serious blow to the country's transportation sector. Truck drivers are spending hours waiting to refuel or refusing long-haul routes altogether for fear of running out of fuel in remote areas. Many people are asking, how can a country built on oil run out of gasoline? It sounds unbelievable.
What is going on? Gasoline costs 90 rubles in Rostov, but here it's 400. I just can't take it anymore. I don't understand.
Freight transportation costs across Russia have risen by an average of 30%, while rates on the most affected routes have surged by as much as 150%. The disruptions have affected cargo deliveries from China as well as domestic supply chains. The agricultural sector has also been hit, according to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service.
The pace of the grain harvest is running almost 3 times slower than last year. Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Patrushev has publicly denied any systemic problems with the harvest, yet failed to provide any concrete figures comparing harvested acreage or grain output with last year's results. The fuel crisis comes on top of shrinking cultivated farmland. As of June 1st, the area planted with spring crops had declined by 11.3% year-on-year, while winter crop acreage was down 7.4%. From a statement by Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service.
President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the successful completion of another long-range operation carried out by Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces, together with the Security Service of Ukraine and the Military Intelligence Directorate. The strikes targeted facilities in Russia's Moscow and Tambov regions. According to Ukrainian officials, the logistics hubs were used to supply drone components and navigation equipment, while the damaged fuel depot served as a key storage and distribution facility for fuel traders across the Moscow region.
Our long-range sanctions struck targets in 3 directions inside Russia, as well as in our temporarily occupied territories and at sea. In response to Russia's attacks on our civilian infrastructure, cities, and communities, 2 major logistics facilities were hit in the Moscow and Tambov regions, more than 500 and nearly 700 kilometers from the front line. A major fuel facility was also struck. In addition, our medium-range strike systems operated against targets in the Sea of Azov, the Black Sea, and temporarily occupied Crimea. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
According to open-source intelligence analysts and reports circulating on Russian social media, a major wildberries logistics hub in the city of Elektrostal, covering nearly 200,000 square meters, burned for most of the day. Residents of the Moscow region shared footage showing thick smoke drifting toward the area around Domodedovo Airport. Ukraine's general staff also confirmed a strike on an oil storage facility in Noginsk. According to publicly available information, the depot contains 24 storage tanks with a combined capacity exceeding 11,000 cubic meters. Russia is attempting to offset the fuel shortage by banning gasoline exports, increasing subsidies for domestic refineries, and importing fuel from neighboring CIS countries, including Kazakhstan. Meanwhile, India raised its imports of Russian crude oil to a record level in June 2026, more than 2.5 million barrels per day. Russian crude now accounts for over half of India's total oil imports.
The idea that Russia can quickly resolve this crisis through imports is nothing more than an illusion. As long as Ukrainian strikes on oil refineries continue, the crisis will only deepen. Curiously, reports from Moscow suggest that fuel shortages in the capital are easing. That likely reflects the redistribution of fuel from other regions to create the appearance of stability ahead of September's State Duma elections. But this comes at a price. It fuels resentment in Russia's regions, where long-standing tensions with Moscow are becoming even more pronounced.
Russia's war against Ukraine is placing increasing strain on the country's financial stability after years of massive military spending. Stock market indices continue to fall, the value of state-owned banks is declining, and economic pressures continue to mount. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russia's economy has entered a new phase of crisis. Among the clearest indicators are the sharp decline of the Moscow Exchange Index and the Central Bank of Russia's Business Climate Index. Analysts say these developments demonstrate that Russia's economic difficulties now extend far beyond the fuel shortages caused by Ukrainian strikes on oil refineries. Reported by Victoria Chistukina, UATV News.
Well, that's it for today. I'm Henry Keane. Thank you so very much for your time, for watching this segment. We feel your attention and we appreciate that a lot indeed. Please also share, comment, subscribe to UATV. We got you covered on whatever tomorrow holds for all of us, but as usual and always in a bit of Ukrainian perspective added to it. Stay safe and see you tomorrow.